Hello everyone and welcome back to Football a la Turca. We have a very special episode again for you following our interview with Gabriele Marcotti 2 weeks ago. We have a new guest today, George D. Metellus from beIN Sports USA. George, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you guys contacting me. This is going to be fun.
I think so too. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on the Turkish League and just football in general. It's going to be very interesting. And also joining us is Umut Naderi. Umut, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And Özer and Burak couldn't be here today, so they won't be here. So no mentions for them for the rest of the show. George, let me start off. How did you get into football coverage in the United States? Is it difficult to get a job in that sector?
It is a very unconventional way that I myself got into it. I still don't. Sometimes I wonder how did I even get to this point? It's very unconventional. I went to college at University of Miami. Big up to all the Hurricanes out there. And I went to college, graduated, couldn't find any work, and I went to broadcasting school after that. And I actually was working on a radio station, doing behind the scenes things like cutting audio. Every once in a while I'd pop on the air if I was doing board operator for a show. And I was just doing that. I actually had to stop doing the radio because in America, radio pays crap. I mean, it's barely minimum wage. And I'm single. So I'm like, I can't get no woman off a minimum wage job. So I had to get another job outside of the field. And I was actually out of broadcasting for a while. And then I got very lucky because there was a network called Gold TV. Gold TV was based here in Miami. I live in Miami. And I actually did an internship with Gold TV when I was in college, but it never led to a job. So a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, his name is Juan Arango, who's one of the best football journalists out there and broadcasters out there. We went to college together. And he started, when he came back from ESPN in Connecticut, he started working at Gold TV. And so we're good friends. So we kept in touch. And he's like, one day somebody at Gold TV was leaving. And so he said, hey, George, do you want to work at Gold TV? And at the time I was working at the front desk of a hotel. I was the manager of the front desk of a hotel. And I was like, yeah, man, anything is better than this job. You know, because people were yelling at me and for things I didn't even know about. I mean, my room is dirty. Well, don't yell at me. I didn't clean the room. I work the front desk. I'm not the housekeeper. Yeah. So it was frustrating. And then he calls me, said, you want to work at Gold TV? And I said, sure. And at the time, Gold TV, alongside Fox Soccer Network, those were the two kind of big football networks in America. Mm-hmm. Gold TV had the rights to La Liga. I think they had Serie A. They had some South American leagues, and I think they had U.S. Open Cup final a couple of times. So they had some good properties on Gold TV. So I went into the offices, and I had to speak Spanish. I speak Spanish as part of living in Miami. Yeah. And the people that ran Gold TV, it was a bilingual network, Spanish and English. And the people who ran Gold TV, there were some Uruguayans, some Argentines. And so I had to interview with them and audition. And they put me on a game, and I had to call 10 minutes of a game. It was like Barcelona against, I can't remember who it was. And this was back in 2010. And so they said, all right, we'll give you a job freelance on the weekend. I said, okay. But I didn't get on the air immediately. I was working doing closed caption. So I was watching games and in the back typing closed captioning for the games that were being aired on the weekend. And then eventually, about 5 or 6 months, someone else left, and they say, George, you want to fill in his spot and make you full time? And that's how I became a football broadcaster off of that. I actually became full time at Gold TV in April of 2011. And I did that for 4 years, and I started, you get better, you learn from people like Phil Shane. I know Phil Shane almost 10 years now. And Ray Hudson, I work with Ray Hudson at Gold TV, and you learn from people as the producers, older guys that are football journalists in their respective countries in Uruguay, Argentina, Colombia, different places. And you learn, you pick up things, and you make your mistakes, but you learn from them and you move on. And about February of 2014. Actually, it was close to Valentine's Day, which was weird. I don't know why, but I got a call. I was like, I wasn't dating nobody, so I don't know why we're on Valentine's Day. But I got a call from a producer from Gold TV who left to go to beIN Sports USA, and he was like, George, we got a spot. You want to come through? I was like, sure. And I went and auditioned again, and that was very raw because I hadn't done much on-camera stuff. It was mostly calling games and voiceovers. And they liked me. They gave me a full-time job, and I've been doing it ever since. It's very unconventional. Like, I got into the business at 35 years old. Mm-hmm. I got my job at Gold TV at 35 years old because out of high school, I was living the Miami party life, and I was going to college, but I didn't do well in college, so I went into the military. I was in the Air Force for 4 years. Then I got out of the Air Force, went back to university, and cleaned up my act in university, graduated, got my degrees, and then everything started from there. So it's not like the traditional, you get out of college, you get an internship that leads to a job. It was graduate high school, mess around with my friends for about 2 years, go to the military, get your act together, come back, go to university, get that going. And then after I graduated college, that was 2004, it took me 6 years to find a broadcasting job at Gold TV. Now, times have changed because now there are more networks. They're more spread out all over the country. And with podcasts and YouTube, they didn't have podcasts in 2010. Podcasts, or at least when I graduated college in 2004, they didn't have podcasts like that, YouTube like that. You can get a job now just by having a popular YouTube channel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can make a living from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there are colleagues of mine who got the job at beIN because they had a popular podcast. Mm-hmm. So back in 2004, when I graduated university, it wasn't like that. So people have asked me, how did you get to beIN? I'm like, it is a very, very unconventional path. And I was lucky that both Gold TV and beIN Sports decided to base their operations in Miami. If they had based them someplace else, I'd be a postal worker or something like that.
like Newman from Seinfeld.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, except skinnier and more handsome. Yeah, for sure.
That's a shout out to Juan Arango, of course. We know each other through him, our mutual friend, and of course Roberto Rojas is a great example. I think he's also a mutual friend. He works for beIN.
Oh yeah,
and he's a great example of that new generation of football journalists that he only just graduated a couple of weeks ago, and he's already got a job at beIN Sports just because of his presence on social media, podcasting, stuff like that. So I think it's a great way for young people to get into it these days. And is there any tips you can give young aspiring football journalists in the US, for example? What do they have to do to go out and get that brass knuckle or brass ring, as they put it?
Ring. Ooh, I think, one thing for sure is learn another language. If you can learn, even if you don't speak it well, if you're not fluent, but you can read it, you can say some things here and there, that helps a whole lot. It expands your horizons. I know myself personally, as someone who calls football matches every now and then, if I'm doing a La Liga game, I can read Spanish. And that helps me prepare for the games. That helps me to find information about the teams. During my time at Gold TV, I was doing the Brasileirão, which is the first division in Brazil. So I learned a little bit of Portuguese, and Portuguese and Spanish are very close. So you can kind of figure it out, and then eventually you can separate them in your mind.
Yeah, the Latin
and that helps a lot.
Yeah.
My parents are Haitian, so I grew up around French, and even though I can't speak it well, I can read it well enough where I can find information to research for games and things like that. So being multilingual helps out a whole lot. It helps a whole lot. And then the other thing, too, I would say is don't get caught up in just the European leagues. The European leagues are the glamour leagues. We know that, and that's where, the big money and the big players go. But if you can learn the what's going on in South America. You learn what's going on in in North America, in the United States, Mexico, and those teams. Because remember, a lot of players come from the leagues in the Americas and go to Europe. Same thing with Asia, in the J League, the K League, China, obviously. If you can learn something about those leagues and not just stick to Real Madrid or Barcelona or whatever, I think that helps a whole lot. I always say, if you learn the leagues outside of Europe first, it makes it easier, because it's like driving, stick shift, manual transmission. Yeah. People who learn on a stick shift, they could drive an automatic transmission, no problem. If you learn the South American or the America leagues from players from leagues outside of Europe first, your transition to Europe is easy, because we all know that they're transferring those players to Europe. But if you learn the European leagues first, then it's harder. It's like someone who learned on an automatic transmission trying to drive a car that's a stick shift or manual transmission. They have problems. They can't get it. And that's the issue there. So I would say to people coming up, obviously your podcast, get all that out there and do that, but learn a foreign language, learn leagues outside of Europe. And then the third thing too is, oh man, I had a third thing and then I forgot. But those are the two big ones right there. Third thing, I had one more thing, but I forgot.
No worries. But the most important thing, of course, it's like you said, it's not the most conventional sport in the US. It's, of course, up and coming. It's getting a lot more traction, a lot more popular in the last decade or two. But how did your interest in football start? Is that something that was handed down to you from your parents, from your dad or something? Or how did that originate?
Oh, yeah, definitely from my parents, my family. In Haiti, football is the most popular sport, and by far. Yeah, it's the most popular sport in Haiti. So my parents, born and raised in Haiti, they came to the States. And so when I was younger, obviously growing up in America, you're exposed to the NBA, NFL. But my parents talked to me about soccer. When I was a little kid, I didn't play American football, in a Optimist league or something. I played soccer. I played American football with my friends, like tag, nothing physical, or basketball on the courts in the park. But when it came to being on a team with a coach and everything, when I was a kid, it was soccer. It was football. So that's always been since I was a little kid. And then in the early 2000s, when football is starting to get popular, real football, world football starts to get popular.
London Donovan effect, probably.
And the Donovan effect. But honestly, it's funny. I grew up in the States, but my favorite footballers are not Americans. I was never someone who was inspired to be a commentator because of an American. I like Pelé. I loved Edgar Davids. He was my man. Right. Samuel Eto'o. Those are my players. Seedorf, man. Seedorf is like a god to me. I mean, the guy, everywhere he went, he won a Champions League. He was fantastic. So those were the players, like Ronaldinho. So those were the players. So when I started going to university, I started to think about, European clubs and teams and the leagues in the Americas and stuff. And so you understand that there's footballers out there outside of America that they're like gods. Americans are starting to figure that out now, but I figured that out right out of college. So there's that aspect of it. But it's basically my parents passed it down to me. That's what it was. Parents passed it down to me.
And do you have a favorite team, maybe?
Oh man, you mentioned Juan. Juan always teases me because he says I'm a FIFA fan, and I'm like, what does that mean? Because you have 67 teams. I'm like, shut up. I have to tease him because I'm like, what? You like more than one kind of pizza, right? He said he can never say anything. Yeah, I do. Okay, I like more than one team. But in Europe, my favorite teams are Inter and Arsenal. I'm an Internazionale and Arsenal fan. Okay. And then in the Americas, I like Santos. Santos is the Neymar's club in Brazil, and Junior de Barranquilla, Colombian club. I like them mainly because Shakira and Sofia Vergara are fans of that team. So you have to, when you don't have a team, like I'm not Colombian, so if you're gonna pick a team, and I grew up around a lot of Colombian friends, so they put me on to the teams and everything. And so when you don't have a team and you have no connection to that land, you have to find a reason to like them. So when I found out that Shakira and Sofia Vergara were fans of Junior, I was like, that's my team right there. I mean, and if those two hot women like it, I like them too.
Well, if you're so fond of Shakira, I'm sure you like Barcelona now too, then.
I used to like Barcelona, but what happened was when you start working at beIN Sports and we're the home of La Liga, and you start dealing with Barcelona fans, you start dealing with Real Madrid fans, they are so annoying that I don't like any of them anymore. I appreciate how great Barca is and how great Real Madrid is, but I was like, man, I can't stand your fans. Because if you say one thing bad, you criticize, when Ronaldo was playing with Real Madrid, if you said one thing bad about Ronaldo, oh, you're a Barca fan. If you say one thing bad about Messi, oh, you're a Real Madrid fan. No, my job is not like that. So I can't support any of those two teams anymore. So I'm just entering Arsenal in Europe, and then in South America, it's Junior, Santos, and Boca Juniors of Argentina, and then that's it.
Be happy that you don't speak Turkish, George, because that's basically the same thing in Turkey. If you if you criticize anything from Beşiktaş, then you're a Fenerbahçe fan. If you criticize anything from Fenerbahçe, then you're a Galatasaray fan. And that's just the way it goes. And it's
endless loop.
It's an endless loop, a vicious circle, really. But let's get into that a little bit, because of course beIN Sports picked up the rights to the Turkish League I think 2 years ago now, and since this year I believe they've been broadcasting it in the USA, one highlighted featured game per weekend if I'm not mistaken, and I think you can watch the rest on the beIN Connect app too. Is that correct?
Usually, yeah. Yep, that's it. Yep, we've tried to put at least one Turkish game either with one of the big three. You guys know, one of the big three every week, yeah.
So how many games have
this
you...
was Başakşehir this year.
Oh, yeah, right. That must have been thrilling for you to watch their full stadium every week, huh?
Yeah. But, yeah, all 10 Başakşehir fans, yeah.
But how many games did you commentate this season of the Turkish League, you think?
Ooh, man. Honestly, I didn't really do that many games. I must have done like 4 or 5.
Okay,
I must have done 4 or 5 like hosting, and maybe 1 or 2 actual color commentary or play-by-play. I didn't do that much. I did the highlight show. Me and Eric, we hosted the highlight show, but I didn't get to commentate or do commentary to too many games. I got to watch a lot of them, but I didn't do the commentary that much.
Eric Krakauer, right?
Yeah, Krakauer, right.
Right. Okay, just wanted to give him a little shout out too. What did you know going into this before you started watching it for your job, before you started covering the games? What did you know about the Turkish League? What were your perhaps prejudices about Turkish football? What was your general idea, and what did you know about Turkish football?
The only thing I knew about Turkish football before we started covering it was Beşiktaş, Galatasaray, Fenerbahçe. That's it. I knew that those 3 were the big 3 teams, and that Galatasaray had some success in the early 2000s with the UEFA Cup. They won it, I believe, and that was about it.
I don't remember. Yeah. We don't get reminded every 5 seconds, do we?
Oh, okay.
Umut is a Galatasaray fan, so I'm sure he'll remember.
Oh, okay, yeah. I just remember, honestly, the only thing when we started before, we just knew the 3 big teams. That's it. And after, and I didn't have any. It wasn't a situation where we were going, man, we don't know Turkish League. We don't know how they're gonna play, man. It's gonna be whack, blah blah blah. We didn't think that way. I personally was like excited, and because it was gonna be different. It was refreshing because it was La Liga, Liga. We have La Liga and Liga, and we lost the Serie A. And so I personally was getting, I wouldn't say tired of La Liga, Liga, but it was pretty much, it was starting to get mundane. It was starting to get this kind of the same storylines. Liga was being dominated by PSG. La Liga is usually
Barcelona,
Real Madrid. I mean, Atleti was in the mix as well, but it was usually those 2. And so I was kind of thinking, okay, Turkish League, this is going to be different. Let's see how it is. So it kind of energized. I know for me and Eric and some other people kind of gave us a little bit of a boost because it was something different. But before the league, before we started doing it, I just knew of Beşiktaş and Galatasaray, Fenerbahce. I knew those were the big three teams, and then after that, it was clean slate. Let's see how much we learn after that.
I like you that you put Beşiktaş first in that listing, by the way.
That was just alphabetical, y'all. That was just alphabetical.
No. Come to Beşiktaş. That's good going in cold turkey. I think that's good. You don't have any major prejudices or anything, and you can go into it and seeing things as a neutral completely, how things are. Obviously, Turkish football, I don't know if you caught anything from last season and stuff that happened in the Turkish Cup between Beşiktaş and Fenerbahce, the crazy stuff that went down there. This season was relatively controversy-free, I would say. Of course, there's always some controversy. Is there anything that jumps out to you this season that you really, where your eyebrow just went up and you're like, that's kind of dodgy? Did you have any moments like that in the Turkish League this season?
Any dodgy moments during the season? That's a good question. Well, I mean, the first thing that pops into my mind is how Başakşehir collapsed toward the last part of the season. Mm-hmm. That is something that pops in my mind. When we were doing preparing for the highlight show and whatever, in round 25, they had an 8-point lead over Galatasaray, and then they lost the title. Yeah. So that right there is kind of like, what's going on? You know, I think they just weren't used to the pressure maybe of a run to the Turkish title. I think that's probably what happened.
They've been involved in the title race for 3 years now, and they have a lot of experienced players, but of course the club and the entourage and all that, it doesn't have that really. But if you want to go into conspiracy theories, there could be other things like, the Turkish elections were coming up. We can't have Başakşehir winning the league because it's going to piss people off. So
yeah,
and they lost Istanbul anyway. But yeah, that's of course that's out there. That's like, but it was definitely one of the biggest collapses that when it comes to Turkish football, it's the biggest collapse I can remember. I don't know, Umut, if you remember any team that's ever given away a 8-point lead 25 matches in.
Not recently, no.
I mean, Trabzon had an 11 or a 9-point lead, I think, at the break over Fenerbahce in that very controversial 2010-11 season, and they ended up on level points, but I think
it was close to that in 2006 season where Fenerbahce collapsed at Denizli.
I don't remember exactly what the difference was there, but anyway. So George, let's.
And then one more thing too is I know this is the money and everything, but you have Bayazit who was killing it for Kasımpaşa, and then gets sold to Galatasaray, and there was a point in the season where Kasımpaşa, they looked like they were going to challenge for the title early this season.
Yeah, first half.
And then
they were second.
First half of the season. Yeah, and then they sell Bayazit to Galatasaray, and then they just fell off after that. So I was like, that's a little weird. Why would a team that has the top goal scorer sell them to Galatasaray when they were still, and at the very least, in a position to challenge for the Champions League or Europa League? So that maybe if you're talking about dodgy, that might be a situation right there as well. And then Burak Yilmaz leaving Trabzonspor to Beşiktaş. I mean, and we saw how well they performed that second half of the season. Trabzonspor without him, basically.
And Beşiktaş with him.
Yeah, and Beşiktaş with him. Yeah, they went like on a 11-game winning streak or something. And I think during the winning streak, he scored in every game or something like that for Beşiktaş. So it was.
Yeah, he scored 11 goals in like 12 games or something, I think.
12 games, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was that kind of stuff makes you go, hey, who got the real power in Turkish football right now? But I was a little disappointed that Kasımpaşa had such a great start with Bayazit and then sold them to Galatasaray and kind of gave up on the season. So those are kind of two things that, if you want to say dodgy, that might be dodgy. But
And what was your general impression of the level of the league if you compare it to Europe's top 5 leagues? Were you surprised that it was relatively high, or was it kind of what you expected?
Well, I didn't have any expectations when we started, but I would watch the games and I'm thinking, you know what? These guys are pretty good. Like they play some attractive football here. And it's become a mantra when we do the highlight show is you never know what's like last. It's not a surprise that a team scores a goal in the 90th minute to equalize or win a game. It seems like it happens 2 or 3 times every round in the Super League. So I have to say that it impressed me. The movement, the speed of the game. It was very direct, the approach to the game. I know that a lot of times in European football, especially us that have La Liga, we're used to seeing a little more possession, maybe a more deliberate pace where they're not afraid to get the defenders involved in the possession and they're playing a high line. In Turkish League, if there's space, they run into it and then they work the connections there. So I think we were all pretty impressed with the level of football that is played in the Turkish Super League. It was pretty good, and it was aggressive, attack-minded football, and that's what we like to see. So I was pretty impressed by it. Like I said, I didn't have any expectations of the level of play, but as we started watching it, we're going, you know what? These teams, they have skill, especially you look at, for example, Yeni Malatyaspor, were promoted, 2 or 3 seasons ago, and they finished top 5 this year?
Yeah,
2 seasons ago.
This is their second season in the Super League, I believe.
Yeah.
Umut,
and they
correct
finished,
me if I'm wrong?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they finished 5th, I think, this year.
And they're going to the Europa League.
Yeah, going to Europa League, so that's impressive. So, yeah, that you got to be a good team. You can't be promoted 2 seasons and then get to Europa League and be a crap team. You have to play some good football and aggressive attacking football. So I was impressed with the level of play. And, you know, Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, Beşiktaş, I'm sorry, I had to put it in that order just because, you know, just random.
I wonder that, do you think the buying players like Roberto Carlos, Didier Drogba, or Pepe really makes the impact expected from the view, in your view, like attracting interest from the foreigners?
Yeah, I think that for the Super League, if they're going to get foreigners, you got to get the younger ones. Because I know Didier Drogba was a fantastic player. Roberto Carlos is a legend. And even Pepe he's on the latter part of his career. And I know he made an impact for Beşiktaş because they got to the knockout stage of the Champions League. So that was impressive a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, unbeaten in the group stages, first time too. So that was pretty good.
And I actually called the first leg against Bayern. Me and Eric, we called the first leg of that game for beIN Sports Canada.
Everything was going great for 15 minutes.
And then I think Damagoy Vida had the own goal, I believe, and then red
card. Atiba gave a little bit of a bad back pass, and
yes,
and then Vida had to make didn't have to, but made the foul on Lewandowski. Tried to tackle the ball and got sent off. And I really thought the Beşiktaş started that game really well and took the game to Bayern, but after that it was. Then it was just holding on and hoping they don't score and get to the halftime with 0-0, and then they almost did that, and then like a minute or 2 before halftime they score, and then in the second half the floodgates just went open. I think Wagner Love missed like 1 or 2 really big chances, but yeah, you knew it was over.
But, that first leg I think ended 5-0 or something like that. So but unfortunate, a little bit of that was just unlucky. You know, so they can hang with the big teams in Europe. They just have to be more consistent. And I think that if they can get the younger players, because one of the bad things that MLS has in terms of reputation is this quote unquote retirement league where you get a 38-year-old Andrea Pirlo coming to play for New York or 37-year-old Zlatan Ibrahimovic coming to play for LA. Yeah. Turkish League shouldn't be like that.
Yeah, and it kind of has that reputation in Europe, I have to say. Like it's kind of the sandbox of Europe, sometimes they call it, like a little bit of a derogatory reference to the Qatari leagues and stuff like that, or kind of a retirement home. Less so nowadays. I think it's improved in the last decade or so, but really in early 2000s, mid 2000s, it was definitely had that reputation of getting the older 34, 35-year-old stars, and But
Right.
but now when they get like they still get these guys, but like a Drogba, a Pepe, these are guys on a level that's not what they used to get. Like I believe they used to get like guys like Kostadinov and I don't remember what that Russian was called at Fenerbahce, but like old guys, 34 years old, and yeah, they did have a little bit of a negative reputation. But I think what Umut really wanted to ask is, what do you think the Turkish league has to do? For example, now that beIN has the rights in the States, what do you think they have to do to attract more attention? I don't know if you have noticed that US
as a fan base,
as a fan. I think doing well in the Champions League is probably the best way. Doing really well in the Champions League is the best way to do it, because look, I have friends who I told you I used to be in the military. I was in the Air Force for 4 years, and you know, my friends now, they're starting to get into soccer. They're getting into football. And one of the ways that they know the teams is because, well, football is on all the time here in the States. No sport is on more often than football. But they see the Champions League. They're seeing that the Champions League and the teams making runs in Champions League. And so if they see that Galatasaray make a run to the quarterfinals, they're gonna be, hey, okay. And then a lot of it has to do, surprisingly enough, this is weird, but it's true. If the kids look good, then these people will, and they make a good run in the Champions League, that gives attention too. You know, I mean, it's kind of superficial, but it makes sense. If the team, especially if you're a football fan, and you don't really have a team, you might like the shirt because it looks good. That brings attention to a club as well. So, but the number one thing that these clubs, the reason why they bring in a Pepe or Didier Drogba or Robin van Persie or even Wesley Sneijder, Samuel Eto'o, things like that, it's because they feel that they can use those guys to get into the Champions League and make a good run in the Champions League. If they do that, boom, that raises the profile of the league, that raises the profile of the club, and that makes the league more popular. And if it's more popular, that means more people watch beIN Sports, which means I could get paid consistently. So that's good too. So
great.
So that's good too. But I think really it's all about runs in the Champions League. If they make a good run in the Champions League, then everything else kind of can fall into place, and they can build the brand from there.
Let's talk for a moment about viewership in the US for the league. And in particular, where I want to go with this is Tyler Boyd. This new revelation for the US national team. I've seen a lot of talk shows on it already with guys like, basically the people just saying, well, I didn't know him before. What's his name? Fiore, I believe. I think he said like
Fernando Fiore.
Yeah. Let's be honest, guys. I don't think anyone knew this kid before this match or something like that. And I've seen some podcasts on YouTube on the U.S. men's national team, and basically saying, look, we didn't really know this guy. We didn't really know what to expect. You had the advantage of seeing him in action for 6 months for Ankaragücü. Did you expect that he would have this immediate impact with the U.S. national team?
Oh, I did not expect it. No. And with Ankaragücü, he was very good. He played very well, obviously well enough to get a national team call-up, but I didn't expect him to have that kind of impact. And I think what it says, it says two things. One, obviously, three things. One, he's very good. Two, that the American football public needs to be educated more on leagues outside of the big ones in Europe. And three, that the Turkish league, maybe not maybe, the football in the Turkish league is better than MLS, because a lot of those guys on the U.S. national team are MLS players. And the Turkish Super League is producing a player in Tyler Boyd who you can see the difference in his game and how he plays compared to the MLS players, because the competition in the Turkish league is much better than the MLS. So that might even be, if you're an American kid and you see Tyler Boyd doing it at Ankaragücü, you're thinking, all right, maybe that could be a route for me to go.
Yeah, and of course he played in Portugal too, which is great.
Right. Yeah, and hey, maybe Tyler Boyd, he has a good Gold Cup. He continues to light it up for Ankaragücü. Galatasaray might come calling, Fenerbahce might come calling, Beşiktaş might come calling. You never know. And I mean, and Fenerbahce, they could use all the help they can get because they had a rough year.
Actually,
okay?
Beşiktaş want to bring him in as a replacement to Ricardo Quaresma. They're in talks with his club, but still, yeah, they are.
I mean, and you have an American playing at Beşiktaş, that's going to increase the profile of the league here. So that's big too. That's really big. And don't forget, I'm like I said, my parents are from Haiti, so Caribbean. Orgil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Angaraguju as well. That's his teammate.
Yeah.
And Jamaica's through to the knockout stage of the Gold Cup as well. So, and you would think that if you're talking about a Turkish club putting players in big international tournament, it would be the big three. But it's Angaraguju, the capital, that has two very influential players in the Gold Cup knockout stage. So that's a positive thing for the league as well. That could put more eyeballs onto the league, and then the viewership could go up for the Super League.
If you were if you were Tyler Boyd's agent and he has offers from the MLS, really lucrative, interesting offers, and he has offers from Turkey, from a Galatasaray, Beşiktaş, Fenerbahçe, would you say, well, you know what, go to the MLS? It'll give you more exposure to the U.S. crowd. You'll definitely get a spot in the U.S. national team going forward, if he hasn't already earned that. Of course, it's only been 3 games. So, or would you say, well, you know what, the level in Europe is arguably higher. You're going to get the chance to play Europa League, Champions League, and you're playing in a European league. What would you recommend him, just from a pure sportive perspective?
Oh, I tell him to stay in Europe, no question. Not even that's an easy decision. That's an easy decision. Stay in Europe. That's where you're going to develop as a footballer, in Europe. Yeah. And if you mentioned Beşiktaş is going to be interested in this kid as a replacement, that means they're really interested. That's going to raise his profile personally in Europe, because you guys know this much better than I do. If a player is good in Turkey, these big European league clubs in those big leagues, they'll come and get him. Everton, what was the kid? The kid that went to Everton? Yeah, Cenk Tosun, right? Yeah. Right. He went to Everton. He's starting to light it up. He was lighting it up in the Super League. Yeah. So if you have talent in the Super League, they will find you. They're paying attention. They are paying attention. So that's an easy. I'd say, look, Tyler, learn Turkish, learn it really well. And if you can go make the move to Beşiktaş, go to Beşiktaş, because Beşiktaş, they finished 3rd. Yeah. So they're in Europa League. Yeah. So that's a big tournament. Beşiktaş can make a run in the Europa League. It's not unfathomable that they can't make a run in the Europa League. At least get to maybe the round of 32, first knockout stage, whatever.
Given how crap they were this past season and still almost got there. I mean, in any non-disastrous season like last season was, I think Beşiktaş, Fenerbahçe, Galatasaray should always get out of the group stages and go at least to the round of 32 and probably a round further, depending on who you draw, of course. But Beşiktaş have good coefficients and stuff like that. But that's,
and here's the thing too: Beşiktaş in the Europa League, the rights for the Europa League to broadcast the Europa League here in America is TNT. Mm-hmm. TNT, TBS, Bleacher Report, I believe. TNT is on every cable system all over the country. There is not a cable provider that does not have TNT. beIN, we having our issues with cable providers, so I've heard about not helping. Yeah, it's not helping exposure for the Turkish League, but TNT is everywhere.
Yeah, TNT, USA, those are the two biggest networks, I guess.
Yeah. So if he gets on Beşiktaş and he plays in the Europa League, they're going to be watching. And one thing I've learned being a broadcaster here in America, if there's any angle involving an American player, they will put it on the air because they want the American fans to identify with someone. And if it's a Europa League match and it's Beşiktaş and Tyler Boyd starts, they're going to profile Tyler Boyd. And they're going to put his name out there, which means they'll put Beşiktaş's name out there. So it's for him, he needs to stay in Europe.
Okay. You mentioned shirts earlier. Was there a particular kit this season that really jumped out to you that you said, well, you know what, I really like that one. I'd love to get one of those.
You know which one stood out for me? There's the home Trabzonspor with the light blue stripes, and then the I guess it's purple. I don't know. I know the colors. I don't know the names, but it's like a Trabzonspor's home kit. That's the vertical stripes with the light blue and the, I guess, dark purplish red.
Bordeaux.
Bordeaux, yeah.
Bordeaux.
Yeah.
Bordeaux.
It's a sort of purple.
Darker crimson.
Yeah, like a darker, like Bordeaux the wine, right?
Yeah.
Like
yes.
Okay.
Like that.
Definitely.
The stripe, the Bordeaux stripe with the light blue of Trabzonspor, that was smooth.
That's their traditional
like,
shirt, and I believe I think New Era does their shirts. Isn't that an American company?
Oh, it might be. I don't know who the shirt provider is.
Oh, sorry, not New Era. Umut, you know this. What's
right now it's Macron.
Oh, Macron. Okay, which one was Which one does the Porto shirts? What's that called again? Because that's like something like that. But New Era is a
New
cap.
Balance. New
Balance, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I like those Trabzonspor kits for this season. Were pretty cool. I know a couple of years ago, actually like 3 or 4 years ago, before we got the rights to it, I saw a white Galatasaray shirt that was smooth. I said, man, how can I get that one? Oh man, it must have been from.
The one
that's a
like
good question.
It had
it's the
arm striped one thing, you know.
Yeah. Let me
was
see.
That it?
It was the road one. It was a white road one from like 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember.
Probably the season Drogba played there. What are the seasons?
It might have been like 2010, 2011. But I saw a white one from Galatasaray a few years ago, because that's their road kit is the white ones, and then they wear the kind of the traditional red and orange at home. But it was a white one on the road that would look really cool. So I was like, all right, I might have to get that one. And I think Eric, my colleague, he got a Fenerbahce jersey earlier this year. Yeah. He had that yellow and blue striped one, which would look pretty smooth too. But I think this season kits, the Trabzonspor one was nice. I like that one.
Okay. Let's see. What else do we have left to talk about? Of course, do you have a game that really stood out to you this season where you thought, like, man, that was really propaganda for football. That was an amazing game of football with two teams that really went for it. Do you have any match that jumps out?
Oh, man. Let's see. A game that jumps out as a good propaganda for the Turkish League. Well, I would say the intercontinental derbies, but they all kind of...
Yeah, they're usually not that great in terms of level, are they?
and that's what we always think of when we think of that rivalry is the atmosphere in the stadium kind of more than the game itself.
Yeah.
So that was the thing, but man...
You have the 3-3 between Beşiktaş and Fenerbahçe, with Beşiktaş being 3-0 up at halftime and Fenerbahçe coming back.
Right.
That
was wild. Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think off the top of my head here if there was a game that stood out for me. I mean, the one that pops to mind is the clincher for Galatasaray against Başakşehir in the penultimate game of the season.
Mm-hmm.
The one of them that was impressive to me was a Monday night game. I think Beşiktaş I forgot who they beat, but they beat them like 7-0.
Antalya 7-2 maybe? Or Rizespor, which was like, was it 2-7-2 or
7-3? I think
7-3, right?
Something like that, yeah. But like Adam Ljajic had a great game,
right?
And it was,
he's talking about that.
Yeah,
that was.
I think that's the one. Those two stand out for me. The 3-3 for Beşiktaş Fenerbahçe that's a great shout out right there. But the two that come to mind when you ask the question was Galatasaray clinching the title against Başakşehir, and then Beşiktaş in that game, that's 7-2. Who was it against? Was it against
7-3 was against Çaykur Rizespor, and 7-2 was against Antalyaspor. Both were away games, by the way. So
yeah. I think it might have been Antalyaspor against the 7-2 of Antalyaspor.
Antalya, that was the one where Kagawa made his debut, and like after 10 seconds he scored when he came on as a sub.
That was it. Oh, another memorable game, Rizespor beating Fenerbahçe earlier in the season. That was pretty memorable, especially Rizespor had just been promoted. So, and that's how that I think that they got promoted. I think that's when you knew that they were going to stay. Like they were a serious team that they didn't have to worry too much about relegation, and they avoided relegation pretty comfortably too. So
they were really fun to watch in the second half of the season. They got some good signings, and they were for a long time. I thought they were playing some of the best football in the league in that second half of the season. I really enjoyed them.
And his name Vedat Muriqi is he might be leaving soon too if he keeps playing the way he's playing. Yeah,
Galatasaray are rumored to be interested in him. I think he would be perfect for Trabzonspor because Hugo Radallega just signed with Denizlispor.
Okay.
So I thought he was going back to Colombia to Santa Fe because they were in negotiations with him, but apparently they couldn't reach a deal. So now he signed with the newly promoted Denizlispor. So Trabzonspor without a striker, I think Vedat Muric would be perfect for Trabzonspor. I think he'd be the first choice there. I think at Galatasaray he'd probably end up on the bench. But I just think that would be a perfect next step for him. He's still pretty young. He's only like 24, I think. So he could take that step, move to Trabzonspor for 2 or 3 years, depending on how successful they are. If they don't win any titles, he could still go to Galatasaray after that or something if he proves himself.
Trabzonspor, they have a pretty good squad with Sosa. You have Yusuf Yazici. What's the kid? I think Abdelkader Omur.
And Parmak, he's really good too.
Yeah, so I mean they got a good attacking core there. That if he joins up, I think 16 goals last season. So yeah, Trabzonspor, maybe they could make a run next year at the title. That would be interesting.
If they keep this team together and if they make a couple of signings, maybe in the back line, I think they could definitely be contenders. That brings me to my next question. Really, like, which team did you really like when you watched them this season?
Ooh. I think it'd have to be Trabzonspor. Probably Trabzonspor.
I thought it was going to be Trabzonspor.
Yeah. I mean, Jose Sosa can score free kick goals. We mentioned Yazici. They call Abdelkader Omur the Turkish Messi, which I'm like, don't call him that. Let him just be himself. Don't do that to him.
He's the third one already. You had Mohamed Dilinci a couple of years ago, then you had Emre Mor, and now it's Abdelkader Omur. But yeah, he should just be Abdelkader Omur the first, and not Lionel Messi, Turkish Lionel Messi the third.
Yeah, exactly. Don't do that to the poor kid. But he's those the Yazici Domes. I mean, they were good. They were impressive. They might have been the best team in that second half of the season, or at least the most entertaining. They were fun, and
Hugo last 10 games or so, they really hit their stride. I think they started off a little bit because they went into the halfway break kind of in a decent position, and they had that first match back in January against Başakşehir, and had they won that, they would have really been in the title race. But they lost that. They really you saw that the nerves got to them in that game, and they couldn't really. Plus some dodgy referee calls, I think, but they were really impotent up front, really. They did lose that match due to some favorable calls for Başakşehir, but in terms of getting the job done themselves, the nerves got to them, I think, and that might have to do with the fact that they do have a lot of young players still. Exciting team for sure.
And they were the one that ended Beşiktaş's winning streak at the end of the season as well, if I remember correctly. So
I think Galatasaray beat them first.
Who beat Beşiktaş first?
Yeah, Galatasaray beat Beşiktaş, and then the week after they went to Trabzon.
Oh, the week. And then that was because Trabzonspor had a chance to still finish third.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. Yeah, but that was still that's a young, exciting team right there. So I think Trabzonspor is a team to watch out for next season. Yeah.
And any players that really jump out to you besides the ones that you already mentioned now from Trabzonspor? Any players in the league? Like, name a couple that you really like.
Let's see. Well, I'm trying to avoid the Mbaye Burak Yilmaz.
No, go ahead.
I'm trying to avoid those guys. No, I mean, because they're goal scorers and everything. But I'm trying to think of. I'm going through my head here of players here. Oh, Vedat Muriqi, we mentioned that. I think with Rizespor, big reason why they were able to stay up. Abdelkader Omur, we mentioned him. Ooh, who else? Let's see. I couldn't think of anybody. Sorry, Fenerbahce fans. I can't think of nobody in Fenerbahce. I'm sorry.
Peguli, Vizca.
Like Yunus Belanda. Yunus Belanda is very good for
our co-host Özer will hate you now because he's a Galatasaray fan, but he absolutely despises Yunus Belhanda for some reason. Which Umut and I don't get it, but yeah.
Right.
I like him.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's mainly because he took the number 10 jersey from Wesley Sneijder.
No, I think it's because he's like ruthless and arrogant behavior, like reckless kind of behavior.
Yeah, reckless. Right. I wouldn't call him arrogant. I think he's reckless, but I mean, he lacks some composure, some self-control sometimes. But I wouldn't call him arrogant, though.
I forgot the one that popped, Edin Vishka.
Yeah,
might have the best player from the tournament, best player of the league.
Yeah.
For Başakşehir, he was great. I mean, even Gunok was pretty good. I know that Başakşehir was a more defensive-minded, so that helps the goalkeepers out a lot. But I mean, Edin Vishka was excellent. I don't think they make a run toward the title, if he doesn't have the season that he had. I think I believe he won Player of the Year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He did. I mean, Edin Vishka really stood out as a player there. So I have to give one of the Başakşehir players some credit because they were pretty good. You know, he was really good. So I would say, I mean, Edin Vishka was fabulous, and we'll see if they can. If Başakşehir finishing second, they have to go through the playoff rounds of the Champions League. But if they do that, maybe he can raise his profile as well in Europe and raise the club's profile as well. So we'll see. But yeah, Edin Vishka was great. Femi Mert Gunok in between the sticks as a goalkeeper was great for Başakşehir. And then obviously the big goal scorers like Dembayetian, Burak Yilmaz, that those midfielders we talked about for Trabzonspor. I was thinking somebody I wanted to say for Yeni Malatyaspor. I almost said Halil Buteyeh. Daniel Alexic, yeah. But I forgot. I almost said Halil Buteyeh, but he wasn't there this season. I think he
left in January, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, he middle of the season, yeah. But he was actually he was a Moroccan goal scorer that when we first started covering it and paying attention, he was actually scoring pretty well, decent goal scorer for Yeni Malatyaspor before he got transferred.
I liked him.
Yeah, so that was one player that stood out. But I mean, Edin Vishka has to be. He was the player of the year, so I mean that's got to be number one, at least this season. Yeah.
Do you think it's time for him to move on? He's been at that club for a very long time, and you know, like we already alluded to earlier, he's playing in front of very small crowds, and it's just he's such a great player. Doesn't he deserve to have 30,000-40,000 people chanting his name every home game?
I would think so. The question is, how much is Başakşehir asking for him?
10 million.
And 10. Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Oh man, Galatasaray and Beşiktaş can afford that.
Beşiktaş can't really. No, I think they have to be a little bit more. That's why they're going for the younger.
Yeah. That's why they got rid of Pepe and a bunch of those players.
Yeah, they had to. Yeah. And then Galatasaray have the Champions League money now coming in, of course, but there's a big reformatting coming in terms of the debt structure from all the clubs. There's an agreement with the banks in Turkey. They're gonna restructure the debts of all the clubs because Fenerbahçe, Beşiktaş, Galatasaray, Trabzonspor. I think every single Super League club has serious financial issues except for, I want to say, Sivasspor and Göztepe. I don't know if I'm missing another one, Umut, but almost every single one of the Super League clubs are having serious financial issues, and with the rates of short-term loans going up so dramatically high right now, it shot up in the middle of the season. It was like almost 30% interest. So if you had to like cover up some expenses with a short-term loan, it would just cripple you, and they're trying to put them all on the long run now. We're going to do an episode on that actually in a couple of weeks with John O'Carr, and he's going to explain everything and then talk about the financial status of the league. But of course, that's not something you're focusing on.
I'm not an economist, so I'm gonna have to listen. I'm gonna have to listen to the podcast to learn that information because, unfortunately, I'm not an economist. But it is important for the teams, and we mentioned Edin Vishka. If the price tag is 10 million and these other teams can afford it, then he might be stuck there. And you hate to say stuck. That sounds kind of bad for a team that finished second and almost won the title. But you figure a player of his abilities could really shine in a different team. with a bigger profile. So we'll see how that plays out. But I mean, 10 million, that's kind of cheap to tell you the truth. In the modern football market, that might be cheap.
Yeah, but in Turkish League, it says the expectations really high. In previous examples like Amrabat coming to Galatasaray previous years, and also Rodrigo Tabata, and also the recent example could be Mbaye Diagne, who was given like 12 million euros, and he gave pretty much less what he gave to Kasımpaşa recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he scored 10 goals and 8 of those were penalties, I believe, for Galatasaray.
Yeah.
So he had one really good goal, of course. That header against Rizespor was amazing, but basically I don't know if you noticed a really big difference. Like at Kasımpaşa, he was really phenomenal, but at Galatasaray, what was your impression of him there? Did you think that he lived up to the expectations, or the expectations that you had at least for him at Galatasaray?
No, I thought that he definitely did not play as well with Galatasaray as he did for Kasımpaşa. When Kasımpaşa, it seemed like every week he was scoring, it seemed like.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he scored like 20 goals in 17 games or 16 games.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous for sure. And I was shocked that he got transferred to Galatasaray because, and we mentioned it before, we thought Kasımpaşa had a chance to at least qualify for Europe if they had kept him. And they also made a coaching change too, which
I think the main issue with Kasımpaşa was they knew they weren't going to get into Europe because they have some they couldn't get a UEFA license. I think they kind of knew that already. So I think that's
okay.
probably.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
No, of course that's not. I mean, that's not something that you'd hear.
Yeah, that's knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, but man, he definitely, his form dipped with Galatasaray. That's for sure. Maybe it's a new club. The playmakers, the tactics were a little bit different. Next season, he might tear it up. He might just he's figured it out, and so he might be able to do next season for Galatasaray what he did in the first half of this past season with Kasımpaşa. So
don't be surprised if he gets sold, actually, because they're already kind of looking at, well, he didn't really deliver what we wanted, and maybe we can still make a small profit on him. So he might actually end up going to, I believe, Al Shabab is being mentioned, Umut, and Al Ittihad maybe as well. I'm not sure. Some Qatari.
Yeah, but I think there's a kind of transfer like being rejected in Arabian teams or the Qatar teams, so including Diagne's transfer, and I think he's not gonna make it.
Okay.
So you think he's gonna stay at Galatasaray then next season?
I think so, but I think Galatasaray already trying to get rid of him as well, but just waiting for the offer to come to them.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise when you consider that Bafétembi Gomis had a phenomenal season, and then they sold him immediately too. So,
and he's doing great there too as well. I think he had like 24 goals or something this season in Qatar.
Yeah. So I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise. It's disappointing, especially for those of us who watch the league, because I wanted to see Bafétembi Gomis play in Champions League. I wanted to see how he do with Galatasaray in the Champions League. Didn't work out that way, and now we won't. It's possible that we might not see Mbaye Diagne in the Champions League for Galatasaray. So that's disappointing, but I guess that's modern football business, and that's a shame.
Were you surprised that Galatasaray were so underwhelming in the Champions League? They got a really good draw in the group stages, I believe. Who were they drawn against? Umut, Lokomotiv Moscow,
Porto, Schalke,
and Schalke.
Yeah.
So were you surprised at all that they couldn't finish top 2 in that group? And I think they got like 4 points or something. Did you expect more?
I think I was expecting more. But I think what happened was when they sold Bafétembi Gomis,
they didn't have a striker in the first half of the season, basically.
Yeah.
That lowered my expectations, because look, we all know. You watch the game a lot. All three of us, we watch the game a lot. Look, sometimes I keep it simple. You win by scoring goals. I mean, it's not. Sometimes it's complicated because you have the midfield and all of that and marking. But sometimes it's just you need someone who can score goals. And all the teams that win the championship in every league, they have someone who can score a lot of goals. And in the Champions League is no different. And for Galatasaray in the Champions League, who was the player that you said, okay, can get me a goal, can get me to a goal? You know, they didn't have one. None.
Very true. Yeah.
And that's why that goes back to the selling of Bafétimbi Gomis, because we wanted to see how he could do. He could be someone who could have, maybe if he stays, they get out of the group. Because it wasn't like a group with Juve and Real Madrid and Barca or something like that. It was a group that could have been fruitful for them.
That was the luckiest choice.
Yeah, absolutely. So they could have gotten out of that group.
That was an amazing.
But
it's like probably the dream draw almost. I mean, they were in pot 4, and you get Lokomotiv Moscow for pot 1. That's like the dream. I remember a couple, like 10 years ago or something. Beşiktaş were in the Champions League, and we were in pot 3, and I was so happy because we were gonna get a weaker team, and then the draw happens, and who did we get? Wolfsburg, the German champions. From pot 4. That was before they changed the draws that the champions from the top 6 leagues go straight into pot 1. So Wolfsburg hadn't been playing in Europe, so they had a really low coefficient, and then they won the league with Misimovic, Dzeko, Grafit. And then we were so happy with pot 3, and then we got Wolfsburg from pot 4, and they absolutely body slammed us all around. Yeah, they had their way with us. Team. That was very disappointing. So, I mean, Galatasaray being in pot 4 couldn't have been a better draw, I think, almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's disappointing. I just pulled it up on I'm at home, so I pulled it up on the computer. They only scored 5 goals in the group stage in 6 games. That's not enough.
They scored 3 in their first match against Lokomotiv or something, didn't they?
Yeah.
2 or 3 games. Yeah. So, what are your expectations heading into next season? Because Galatasaray will be directly qualified for the Champions League. How do you think they will perform this time around? Do you think Fatih Terim will improve on last season's performance?
Well, I hope so. I would like to see a Turkish team in the knockout stage, because it's something different, than your usual English or Italian or Spanish teams in the knockout stage. So that would be nice. It still depends on the Bayazit situation, and if they can keep him, and then how he adjusts, and if he can perform and score goals in the Champions League. I think they can, and obviously depends on the group that they get.
Yeah,
because you want to avoid your Real Madrid, your Barca, your Juve, Bayern, things like that. So that depends on the draw. Manchester City, Liverpool, United. Yeah, well, no, United's not in it this year.
You definitely want to avoid Liverpool. Trust me, guys. Right?
Oh yeah. Liverpool, they look strong. Yeah, for sure. So depends on the draw, but like I said, if they can find someone who just can get them goals consistently, and they get a good draw, a good group, a group that's manageable, that doesn't have these powerhouse teams, I don't see why they can't get out of the group stage. They should be able to get out the group stage. I mean, I think Galatasaray, more than the other 2 big clubs, and I'm sorry Beşiktaş fans, sorry for Fenerbahçe fans, but Galatasaray, they should be the Turkish club that consistently gets out of the group. They have that kind of pedigree where at least one nation has a team where you go, okay, they have a shot to get out of the group every year. And I think for the Turkish Super League, it's Galatasaray. So we'll see how that works out. But depending on the draw of the groups, and if they can keep him by Bayazit, and if he can adjust. I know Fatih Terim is an intelligent manager who has experience in these European competitions. So you figure he's going to figure some things out and put the team in a better situation. I think those factors come together well. I can see Galatasaray getting out the group, get to the knockout stage. I can see that happening.
Okay, how do you? What are your expectations for the other teams in Europe? We already spoke a little bit about Beşiktaş, but Trabzonspor, for example, and Başakşehir, and Malatyaspor especially. What do you think? How are these teams gonna do?
Başakşehir, I think, because of the fact that they were a very defensive-minded team in the Super League. that might work well for them.
Well organized, I think you could say.
Well organized defensively, yeah, I think so. And then if, let's say, Edin Vishka plays very well, that could have an impact then. But when you don't go directly into the group stage, and I think they're in like the third playoff round, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
it's not like 2 matches in the.
They have really low coefficients, so they're gonna draw a strong team in the playoffs if they get there. So last time they got Sevilla and they got super close, but didn't. They had a ball hit the post in the last minute. If that would have gone in, they would have actually gone through. But they have to play like either 4 or 6 matches just to get to the group stage. I think that's going to be tough for them. I think 4 games.
4. Yeah. So then if they can if they can find a decent goal scorer, a good goal scorer, because I think Adebayor is leaving. Well, Adebayor didn't do that much anyway.
He left already. Yeah,
he left, but he didn't do that much anyway, so it's not a big difference. But if they can survive that.
They signed a Norwegian striker. What was his name again, Umut? They just signed it. They announced it like yesterday, I believe. A Norwegian striker.
Yeah, but I don't have his name right now.
Go look it up, dammit.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's going to be tough for them. I honestly, I don't see them in the group stage
Maybe
of the champions. If they fall to the Europa League, that could help them out. That's a possibility. I actually think that Beşiktaş has a very good chance of making a good run in the Europa League.
Yeah, they're straight into the groups thanks to Galatasaray winning the cup. They don't have to play qualifiers thanks to their Istanbul neighbors, so they'll be straight into the Europa League group stages. And of course, they have a new coach. The former Başakşehir coach Abdullah Avcı is now Beşiktaş's coach, and Okan Buruk from Çaykur Rizespor moved to Başakşehir. So, do you think that's going to have an impact on Başakşehir's form next season? Will there be a little bit of an integration period for Okan Buruk, who was actually a pupil of Abdullah Avcı, so he's kind of the same school. But still, it's going to be a big change. Abdullah Avcı had a lot of influence in that club, decided a lot of he was basically the football director almost there.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I think it'll be a big change for sure. I think it might be enough where Başakşehir will not contend for the title next season. I think that Avcı did such a great job that you're going to take a dip. It's going to take a dip. So I think that it might next season might just go back to the big three again. Yeah, with Trabzonspor knocking on the door there. So
do you expect Fenerbahce to make a run for the title next season, given their run this season and they lost a lot of players now? That Valbuena went to Olympiacos. Skrtel's contract is up, but they're still trying to renew that. Mehmet Topal was just released today. They have a lot of changes for sure this summer. Do you think they'll make a serious run for the title?
I don't see it. I think the 3 teams to watch for next season in terms of the Turkish title will be Galatasaray, Beşiktaş, Trabzonspor. I think those are the 3. I think Fenerbahce, they'll get top 5. They won't be in the relegation zone. We know that. I think they'll avoid that for the most part of the season.
That's not going to happen again. I think that was a once in a lifetime thing. Beşiktaş Galatasaray fans. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. I think Fenerbahce, I don't think they'll challenge for the title, but I think that they'll be clear easily in the top half of the table, in the top 5, challenging for Europa League. I think that next year, I think it's going to come down to Galatasaray, Beşiktaş, and Trabzonspor. I think maybe Başakşehir and Fenerbahce fighting for 4th or 5th place. That's what I see. That's what I think. Yeah, I mean, you lose Avcı, and then Avcı's got a bigger budget, maybe better players at Beşiktaş. He tactically, you could maybe say that. I know Başakşehir finished ahead of Beşiktaş, but
he'll have fans behind him this time.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's for sure. He'll have a big crowd behind him. So that I think it's a good move for Beşiktaş, and I think Istanbul, Başakşehir, they're going to suffer a little bit in the upcoming season. And so, but it just makes it more intriguing. It just makes it more intriguing for next season.
And I think I think you're looking forward to seeing Trabzonspor in the Europa League. Am I right?
Oh yeah. I actually think that they have, if like we say, they keep those players that we talked about, Sosa and Yazici and Umut, and they find a good goal scorer to replace Rodallega. I think they could get through the playoff and get to the group stage. I like Trabzonspor. That the Yazici and Umut, those two have been really impressive.
Yeah,
I like this.
I'm a huge fan of Yusuf Yazici. I think he's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, he is.
Fantastic player.
He scored some Harika goals this year. Wow.
Oh, you're already picking up Turkish.
Yeah, I because during the highlight show, in Spanish, you say golazo for a really nice goal. So I said during the highlight show, I said, hey, guys, I'm learning Turkish a little bit, So what's the term for like a really nice goal or a golazo, as they say in Spanish, in Turkish?
Yeah.
So people hit me up on Twitter. You say Harika. You say Harika. I was like, all right, cool. So in the highlight show, if it was a really good goal, I'm like, that's a Harika goal from
if it's like an amazing goal that you've never seen before, then you say Yok böyle bir gol. I've never seen a better goal like that.
How do you say Yok böyle?
Yok böyle bir gol.
Yok böyle bir gol. Okay.
Yeah, I'll write it to you later. Actually, in our intro, there's a goal. We have 3 goals. We have one from Haji, one from Sergen Yalcin, and one from Alex. And I think the one from Alex, it's the commentary.
Yeah, Alex.
Yeah, the commentary said, yeah. So just if you listen back to the episode, you'll hear it in the intro. So
Alex, yes.
Yeah, he was amazing. For me, I mean, I'm 30 years old now, and I've been watching for about 20 years. And for me, the best player I've seen in my lifetime, the best performer, I would say, is Alex, without a doubt. I mean, I caught the tail end of Haji, so I can't really say it's Haji. And my all-time favorite player is Sergen, but Alex just did so much more, performed so consistently for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, how many seasons it was, I don't remember, but he was just so great. So I just have a couple more questions. Yeni Malatyaspor, what do you think is going to happen with them? Are they going to suffer from that having to wake up early, so to speak, play European qualifiers? We've seen in the past it's had a negative impact on teams like Karabükspor, Konyaspor, and this season Akhisar, yeah. So it's had a negative impact on those teams having to play those early European games or just having to play group stage games in Europe, where one season they qualify, and next season they're fighting relegation or even going down. Do you think that's going to happen to Malatyaspor, who just appointed a new coach, Sergen Yalcin, by the way?
Yeah.
Who was
I think it's going to affect them because it's not big enough of a club. They don't have the quality, depth, the roster. If you're Beşiktaş or Galatasaray, you can always you have the money to buy good players to be on the bench, so you can rotate. Yeni Malatyaspor don't have that luxury, and so I think they're going to suffer. I don't think they'll get relegated, but I think that they will be bottom half of the table, and they're still up. I think they'll survive relegation. And for Yeni Malatyaspor, I think every year that they do not go down is a good season for them. Obviously, it was the best season because they qualified for Europa League, but if they get to they start playing Europa League and their form suffers in the league, they'll have issues in terms of staying in the top half. I think they'll finish bottom half of the table. I don't think they'll get relegated, but I think the club is just so small. And from what I've heard, Yeni means new, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So it's a new club, small club. They're going to put the effort in.
There used to be Malatyaspor, but they went bankrupt, so they started a new club with the same club colors and stuff like that, and they just called it New Malatyaspor, basically. That happens sometimes in Turkey.
Oh, yeah.
Gazişehir, who just promoted to the Super League, that's basically just Gaziantepspor, and Gaziantepspor still exists, but they're like in the lower leagues now. They relegated a couple of seasons ago. They kind of went bankrupt. They're still around, but they're in the lower leagues now. Gazişehir kind of took that place. They took the same club colors and everything. It's basically almost the same club as Gaziantepspor, just a new jacket or a new coat of paint.
Okay. I see what it is. I see what they did there. Okay, yeah. Keep it going.
They might be.
But I think Malatyaspor, they might. I mean, I can't predict it, but I don't know if they'll get to the group stage of the Europa League, but still playing Europa League for them is a big accomplishment. But I think if they do make any kind of run past into these playoff rounds, it might hurt them in the league. But let's say they go out early. Let's say they go out early in Europa League because they're in the qualifying rounds. Then it won't affect them at all in terms of the league. And maybe it's better for them if they go out early because then they can focus on the league and making a run possibly toward Champions League, which is obviously more money and more recognition. So we'll see how that plays out. But usually those small clubs like that, when they go to a European competition for the first time, their domestic form suffers. I don't think they'll get relegated, but it will suffer.
And one more question. I think I have two or three more. Just from the top of my head.
The national team thing versus France?
No, you can ask that in a second. I just wanted to ask George what would you say are the biggest differences between Turkey and the top 5 leagues in Europe? What do you think is a positive difference? What do you think is a negative difference? Where can they improve? If you had to pick a couple of examples.
Ooh, well, I think the biggest difference is just the money. The money is huge. I mean, Barcelona is paying $100 million for a player. You know, United is paying $100 million for a player. PSG in France is paying $200 million for Neymar. They're asking almost $300 for Mbappe. So I think the money is the biggest difference between the Super League and those top 5 leagues. I think also for the Turkish Super League, I think they have to overcome a little bit of this kind of Eastern European, Western European, I don't know how to put it, but kind of divide, if you will, because I know that in terms of the European Union, Turkey still is considered Western Europe, but I think the culture is different from your France, your England, Spain, and so maybe that mentality, the viewpoint of the people is a little bit different in terms of how they view Turkish society and things like that. Although I know it's very cosmopolitan and all that, modern, obviously, but maybe that perception of kind of, you know, the Turkish nation is a little further east than most Western Europeans would like to deal with or something like that. So there's that kind of, I'm guessing, just kind of me being kind of ignorant American, that a little bit of a cultural divide there that people don't appreciate.
It definitely exists, I can tell you that. From living in Belgium, there's definitely something like that.
Yeah, there's a cultural divide there, so they're not even willing to be a little more open-minded about the league, because the 2 seasons that I've covered the league at beIN, they've come down to either the last round or the penultimate round. So it's exciting. And I can't say that about La Liga or the Bundesliga or Liga.
Yeah, even the Premier League, normally speaking, and this season it was extremely tied between Liverpool and Manchester City, but the season before,
before Manchester City had it won 3 or 4 rounds before the end of the season. Yeah. So I think getting back to the question, there's that separation there, that kind of cultural divide there that maybe that wall needs to be broken down. So I think there's that. But the quality of play on the field, on the pitch, it's not that far off the Turkish league from the top 5. It's entertaining. It does have entertaining games and late match scenarios that turn a result in the favor of one team or the other. In my opinion, I've seen more late game scenarios and equalizers in the 90th minute or game winners in the 90th minute. I feel like I've seen that more often in the Turkish league than I have in the other leagues and the other big 5 leagues. So it seems to be, even though you have your big 3 teams and those big 3 teams, it seems to be like it's a little more balanced in terms of the competitive level. And that could be good, because sometimes people get tired of seeing Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atleti win La Liga all the time, or tired of Bayern and Dortmund in the Bundesliga all the time. Maybe they get tired of PSG and Liga. You never know. I mean, England has 4 or 5 big money clubs. We all know them. So I think those are some of the differences there. The money, the cultural divide, and I think the fact that the Super League is a little more competitive in terms of the teams and how they can fight for the the Champions League, Europa League, the point differentials at the top of the league. That's really where you can see it. So, and the quality of football, the attractiveness of the game on the pitch, it's close. It's very close. Turkish Super League, they play attractive football. It's close to what you see in the Big Five. So it's there. It's just a matter of getting more exposure for the league, and then obviously get that over that cultural divide. Because, I mean, here in the West, I'll obviously, and you know that you live in Belgium and here in America, I mean, getting an American kid to say Abdulkadir Ömür is hard. You know.
I studied a terrorist.
Yeah, exactly. That's the stereotype. It's a horrible stereotype, but it's true. I studied Arabic in the military, so I can say Abdulkadir Ömür. I could probably even read it if you put it in Arabic script. But most people don't have my education, so that's another issue right there. There's a lot of, I think, the cultural ignorance between the West and the quote unquote East has a little part to play in that, and not being open-minded enough.
I would even dare to say, I think if Turkey wasn't a Muslim country, I think it would be less of an issue. I think that definitely plays a part in the fact that there's a little bit of a negative stigma, but I think it's improving at least. What about the atmosphere in Turkey? Turkey is known for having a very particular atmosphere. The big clubs are famous for it. Is that something that that you've liked? Do you enjoy the atmospheres when you're commentating the games, or just when you're watching them? Is that something that really stands out to you, or is that something that you're used to maybe from watching Boca Juniors or something like that?
The atmosphere. Well, one thing the Turkish Super League is famous for is the atmospheres. That's for sure. I know we have one of my colleagues at beIN. His name is Gary Bailey, played for Manchester United as a goalkeeper. And he has stories about playing, I think he played Galatasaray and going to Istanbul. I can't remember if it was the stadium before the new one here, before Turk Telecom.
Yeah, Ali Sami, and I think that'll be. When did he play exactly? What year was that?
Played in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Ali Sami, and then,
Yeah, and he has stories of the fans there and how they, opposition goalkeeper and how wild it was, and how Sir Alex Ferguson said playing Galatasaray Istanbul was like playing in hell or something like that. I can't remember the quote. But as someone who's a commentator, I like that. I want to see the wild stuff. I want to see, you don't want to see no violence or anything like that, obviously, but you want to see the loud noises. You want to see the players, or excuse me, the fans painted in their team colors. One of the selling points of the Galatasaray-Fenerbahce rivalry is the atmosphere. That's one of the selling points, that when we promote the game on the network or social media, we say it's one of the great, most intense rivalries in all of world football, because it is. That's the truth. And part of the reason, the appeal of it, is the crowd there. So that's something to watch for too. But I've noticed, even like for a couple games that I saw of Risaspor over there at the Çaykur Stadium, it gets pretty loud in there too.
Yeah, especially, they had a good average attendance this season. I think 9,000 or something, which is quite good for a small club like that. I mean,
right? So I think that's something that the league can build on. The fact that they have a passion for the game, and that they get packed houses, or they get good crowds. Because look, even in the Big Five leagues, the big clubs don't sell out every game. PSG doesn't sell Parc des Princes out every game.
Yeah, except for Germany, where the stadiums are filled every week almost.
Yeah. And so it's not unusual to have a stadium that's 75% full. It's not unusual. So, but the Turkish crowds are loud, and they have the passion for the game, and that's something that they could advertise, that they can promote. So that's something that, before I started covering the league, that's something we knew. We knew that Galatasaray Fenerbahce was a big rivalry, or even the big three when they play each other. Those are big rivalry games, and that they get good crowds for those games, good, passionate, loud crowds for those games. That makes it more interesting for us to cover and want to be a part of the broadcast.
Yeah, I think the average attendances are increasing again because after the whole match fixing scandal in the early 2010s and then the introduction of the Paso League system, we saw a really big drop off in ticket sales and average attendances. But I think it's slowly but surely rebounding again. So then one more question I have before I'm going to throw it to Umut for his question. If you had to pick just one stadium, not necessarily the game, but just the stadium to experience the atmosphere firsthand as a commentator, which stadium would you prefer? Would you like to go to Galatasaray, to Beşiktaş, to Fenerbahçe, to Trabzon, or another team?
That's a good question. Honestly,
there is only one right answer, by the way.
Right answer? Oh, okay. I can't say the Akhisar Stadium then. That was going to be what I was going to say.
No, you can say whatever.
Okay.
You want.
I can't say Yeni Dört Eylül in Sivas. Can I say that one? No. That's
You're
a good
memorizing these. Very impressive.
Yeah, I got to. I have to, right?
Yeah.
Ankara has a new stadium, right? Ankara Gucci has a new stadium, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they have a new. There's a new stadium in Ankara. That's correct. Yeah, they just opened it like a couple of weeks before the end of the season.
Yeah. But I mean, how can you? I'm gonna throw it back to before Turk Telecom at the Ali Samiyen. That's, if I remember correctly. You said it, so that's that's
Ali
the name.
Samiyen, yeah.
I've heard stories about that stadium. I've heard stories. People, I mentioned Sir Alex Ferguson saying how hard it was to play there and stuff like that. So I would have to say that's the stadium, man. Galatasaray, especially in a Fenerbahce matchup. That derby, oh man, that might be on my bucket list of football. To go there and be in the stadium for that. That might be fun. Ulker Stadium is nice.
You're disappointing your hero Pele.
I am.
He once said, but this was about the Beşiktaş Stadium before the Vodafone Park, but same location. He said so. It was beautifully located stadium I've ever seen in the world. I think he said that. Yeah. But that's because Beşiktaş, the stadium is located right across from the Dolmabahce Palace, and you walking like literally 2-minute walk from the Bosporus River. So like it's very romantic in terms of location. I think in terms of scenery, I think it's definitely the best located stadium. But of course, it's what happens in the stadium. But again, I'm biased, of course, so I'm not going to make any. I'm not going to say anything there. But I think
I was just going to say, as someone who's new to covering the league, you go by what you've heard in the past.
Yeah, of course.
And so I haven't heard much, and so that's why I say the
Ali Samiyen was fantastic. It was a smaller stadium. But I think the seated capacity was only like 22,000. But back before UEFA implemented all those rules, and Beşiktaş Stadium was also like 22,000 until they expanded it. But back in the day, people would file and stand and just file on the steps, and there would be 40,000 people in those stadiums. It was absolutely mental. Yeah. But I think it's a very good choice to go back in time and go to Ali Samiyen for a Galatasaray Fenerbahçe derby. It's a great choice. Umut, you had a question for George too, I believe.
Well, I have two, in fact. Okay. I want to ask how do you see the foreigner rule applied in our league? Do they have positive or negative impacts on the quality of football being played in the league right now, or the improvement of the native local players in the league? Maybe a similar kind of rules exist in USA or in Europe. Yeah. They act on the quality of the teams and the league.
Well, teams are going to get around it by making all those players citizens eventually, so there's that rule part of it. But look, that's a growing concern in European football, and I think all over the world is you have players that are in the, let's say they go play in Italy, and then do you have a lineup where there are no Italians in the lineup? I think that happened with Atalanta or some team that happened. It might have been Inter that happened this year where they had no Italians in the starting 11. So that's a big concern. I understand why the league's doing it. At the same time, this is the world game. It's hard to tell somebody who's qualified to play in your league, you can't really, you can't be on the team because you're not the right nationality. I think there's a better way of promoting, in this case, Turkish players without having to make a rule of foreign players and how many foreign players you can have or not have. Because let's say I grew up here in America. I'm born and raised in America, and I saw Trabzonspor on TV, and I want to play for Trabzonspor because I like how they play. And I'm good enough. Let's say I'm good enough to play for them. But because of the rule, I can't. I don't know. There's got to be a balance here. I think the big problem, because this is all based on the national team suffering because they're not getting those young players to be on the pitch enough. That's basically what it is. And this is happening all over. But I believe in Chile, because I did Chilean first division for a while. There's a rule where they don't say you can't have this many foreigners. What they say is you have to give this amount of minutes to Chilean youngsters, young players. Maybe they should do that in Turkey instead of saying, well, your squad can only have 5 internationals. Okay, maybe they should say, because the goal is to promote Turkish players, the national team, obviously, right? Say, okay, you have to have a number of minutes that you have to reach. So let's say it's just random number, 2,000, let's say. So you have to have, by the end of the season, youth players in your academy, Turkish-born players, have to play at least 2,000 minutes of Super League football. And if they don't, it's a points penalty or a big fine. Maybe they should do it that way instead of saying you have a limit on how many foreigners you can have on the squad. And you guys know this, they'll cheat. They'll say, okay, well, he's been with us for 3 seasons. Let's make him a Turkish citizen. They give him a passport and make a Turkish citizen. That doesn't count.
Yeah, they did that in the past because we had the foreign limit until 2015. And actually, I think our national team is starting to plug the fruits of the labor of removing the foreign limit, because now we're seeing a lot more young players from Turkey getting the opportunity to go to the top 5 leagues early on in their careers, because they aren't being held hostage by the clubs anymore because there is no limit.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
I mean,
but
yeah, go ahead.
Right. Oh no, I think that maybe they, like you said, or like you mentioned, they're not being held back anymore. That's a good thing. Look, give these youngsters first team, Super League minutes. Put a limit, a number, and say, look, these young players, we need them to develop in the Turkish Super League. We want our national team to be good. So let's say every game, a young person, a youth academy product that's Turkish has to play at least 15 minutes every game, right? That might work. That gets them the experience. More than anything, it gets them that first team training. They're training with the big club. They're getting that experience of what it's like to be a first team player, and then they get on the pitch. And even if the coach puts them in, let's say Antalyaspor is beating Alanyaspor 4-1. Okay, and then Alanyaspor, they haven't done their 15 minutes yet of the youth kid. Put the kid in, even if it's a 4-1 score line for the last 15 minutes as a final substitution, or do a fourth substitution where it's only for that youth product, that young kid, so he can get on there and play 15 minutes and get the numbers. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are ways to promote your youth without having to cut off the foreigners, because it's a great opportunity for a foreigner to come to the Turkish Super League and play in the top flight. And you're going to kind of deny him the chance because he's not Turkish? Well, maybe, I think there's better ways to promote the national team and promote Turkish young players without having to keep out the foreigners as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Gabriele Marcotti 2 weeks ago, he said something similar, that you have to positively enforce it. You have not enforce it, but like stimulate Turkish youth being played in a positive way, not by banning foreigners from an X amount of foreigners. So definitely agree with you there. And Umut, what's your next question that you have?
And just one thing, just to add on to that real quickly. We live in a world that's getting smaller and smaller because of communication, technology, and everything. So these kids, they might say, kids nowadays, they might be a little more socially aware and say, hey, wait a minute. This league is not allowing foreigners because they're foreigners? That's not right. So that, in a way, might be turning them off in a way, it might be turning them off to the Super League and the top flight because they're saying, wait a minute, this is not fair. You know, they want to come play here and they can't because they're foreigners. And kids nowadays are being more and more socially aware of what's going on. And so that's another kind of hidden aspect to this that might be a problem. So we have to see how that plays out.
All right. Also kind of relevant to it, the recent game, Turkey versus France. Turkey beaten France 2-0, I think. Yes, Kaan?
Is that you're talking about the Euro qualifying?
Yeah. We scored twice against French national team, who were the title holders of the World Cup champions. How do you see it going?
Ooh, did you expect it, basically?
Yeah.
Did you see it coming?
Well, I didn't watch the game, so I just heard about the result. So I didn't watch the game, so I don't know how it played out and everything. But just off of the result, because that's all I saw. I did not watch the game. Just off the result, that's pretty impressive. It is pretty impressive. So that's something positive to build off of for sure. If you can beat the world champions, that's a pretty positive result there. So now the question is, well, Şenol Güneş is the national team manager, right? So he's got experience with this. I believe he was the manager when Turkey finished third in the Korea-Japan World Cup.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, 2002. So he's got experience with this. He definitely knows what he's doing. It's just now they just have to continue to build on that, play with confidence. If you can beat, where was the game? Was the game in France or in
Turkey?
Istanbul?
Turkey.
Okay.
Konya. Was in Konya.
Oh, okay, good. Well, that's the main thing. One thing I always say about qualifying, whether it's for World Cup, Euro, you pick up 3 points at home. You always have to pick up 3 points at home. And especially if you're Turkey, haven't been in the World Cup for a while, people are, they're starting to waver on how good the national team is. Like, you can pick up 3 points at home against the World Cup champions. You're building support nationally for the team. That could give them that energy that they need to qualify. So I think it's a positive result. I didn't see how they played. I didn't see the match at all. I missed that match. I didn't see it. But just off of going
well,
result. Oh, they did. Oh, okay, cool.
They did. They deserved it. Fully deserved. They dominated the game. I think France didn't have I don't remember a single.
No shot.
Yeah.
No shot.
Goals.
Yeah. But then, of course, you have to keep in mind they beat France and then they go and lose in Iceland, of course. So
yeah.
So that's typical Turkey, roller coaster up and down.
Yeah. But as long as they got the 3 points at home, that's important, because with qualifying, it's always about defending your home pitch first. So if they were able to pick up the 3 points at home, I think that was crucial. And like you said, now they have to do a better job on the road. That's the main thing. Do a better job on the road.
Okay, Umut, do you have any other questions?
Well, I was going to ask about Brett Friedel. He played in Galatasaray a few years. Yeah, 95. How do you see him? Do you know about him, or positive effects on USA's view on Galatasaray or Turkish League?
What do you mean? What do I see in terms of what, him coming back to coach there, or?
No. He played in Galatasaray for like 1 or 2 years back then.
Yeah, one season, I think.
Yeah, goalkeeper.
Yeah, in 1995 he played there for 1 season, I believe. I think what Umut's trying to say is, what did that improve the profile of the Turkish League of Galatasaray in the US?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? Honestly, I didn't know that he played in Galatasaray. So when you told me that, I was surprised.
I don't think he was first choice. So was he? Was he first choice?
He was first choice.
Oh yeah, he was. That was before Tafarel came.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was before Tafarel came. So.
And he went to also Liverpool there.
Okay. I think what happened if you're talking about Brad Friedel, and then his impact in terms of raising the profile of the league, and I don't think it made much of an impact, because this was, what was it, 1995?
Yeah, it's a different era, I think, in the US.
Especially when it comes to the communication. 1995,
no social media.
No social media. There were none of these cable providers had a network that was showing football regularly, world football regularly. So that would be that wouldn't be the timing was, I don't want to say bad timing. It just probably wasn't great timing in terms of exposing the American public to the Turkish Super League, because like I said, 1995, there weren't even cell phones in 1995. I remember because I didn't have one.
Yeah, it started like 1 or 2 years later, right?
Yeah. They did have cell phones. They were like the big ones that look like
the satellite phones,
phones,
like in Miami Vice and in Scarface and stuff.
Yeah, ones that if you leave in your ear for 1 second, you're gonna get brain cancer because they were that radioactive, you know.
Was it really?
I know.
Is that a fact or you just made it up?
Oh no, I made that up. But there was a while. Remember a while where they said if you keep your cell phone too close to your ears, you could get some kind of sickness or cancer. That's what they used to say like a few years ago. But no. But going back to Brad Friedel, I when you told me he played at Galatasaray, I was shocked just now. So I didn't even know that. So
I think a goalkeeper isn't going to get that much attention in the States because at the end of the day, they love goals. So I think a player that scores a lot of goals, like a Josie Altidore did in the Netherlands, but he actually didn't. He couldn't really make an impact at Bursaspor when he was in Turkey.
And Beşiktaş, Jermaine Jones?
Yeah, Jermaine Jones was there briefly, but he didn't play a lot because he was basically second choice behind Atiba Hutchinson.
Yeah. Also, pretty injured.
Had some injury issues too. I think he went to the MLS, but he's retired now. I think last season or
Jermaine Jones. He's been out for a while. He's been out retired for a while. Actually, we talked about Tyler Boyd earlier. Mm-hmm. He might be the one that, because of the modern technology, all these football networks out there, social media and all that, and now what he's doing with the Gold Cup, he might be the one that brings the Turkish Super League into the attention of the American fans more than anyone else. He might be the one because, like we said, different time in the 90s when Jermaine Jones and Brad Friedel were playing there.
Well, you know what? Tell the head honchos at beIN Sports if they want better ratings to siphon some money to Beşiktaş so they can buy Tyler Boyd.
Well, we need to work on getting our distribution back. We've had some issues, unfortunately, with
you guys were with Verizon, right? And then that got lost or something.
We were with Comcast in America.
Comcast, right.
Yeah, we were with Comcast and DirecTV. Those are the two big cable providers in America. And then I don't even know all the details. I just know that unfortunately there was some disagreement contractually, and so we're no longer on those two cable carriers, but we're still on a lot of platforms, especially online, digital, and some other cable providers. So the Turkish Super League is getting exposed. It's definitely getting some exposure.
Do you have any insight into the data of how much viewership? Because, for example, the Zon has the rights in Japan for the Turkish League, and the match against Shinji Kagawa's debut against Antalyaspor got the highest rating ever in Japan for any football game, for any football game in Japan. The interest was just so, but that does include playbacks and stuff like that. But I got that from a friend actually who works for the Zon in Europe, and he heard that in the office. So I was very impressed by that. So I don't know. I doubt that the impact in the US is that big. The Turkish League gets that much attention, but are the numbers good? Do you know anything about that?
Well, I think the numbers, from what I've seen, they're around what we expected. We weren't expecting big numbers. We're expecting kind of lower numbers. So they've been around those lower numbers. We've had a couple of occasions where, for example, Galatasaray Fenerbahce was on the day that it went live, came close to a La Liga game. Like the ratings were like third. It might have been like the third highest game on the network, second highest game watched on the network. So we didn't have high expectations for it when we acquired it in terms of the ratings, but they've been right there. We've tried to be sensible with the ratings. We weren't expecting to get a 10 or a 12 for the highlight show or a 10 or a 12 for a Galatasaray Başakşehir or anything like that. But we've kept the expectations low in terms of the exposure and the ratings, but they basically hit the expectations we've had, and that's a good thing. because it's new, it's starting out. So you can't you start out small and then you build. And what we've done, we have the highlight show, and we try to put a lot of things out on social media, on the YouTube channel. I think for a while the highlight show was on the YouTube channel, and also on Instagram, all that stuff. We try to promote it as much as possible.
What type of ratings does the highlight show get, or an average game like a one? Does it get a 1.0? Because I think a 1.0 is quite a lot still. It's like 2 million viewers or something, right?
No, I think the way it works, the rating system in America, if it's the Nielsen system,
it's Nielsen.
If you get a point rating, that's 1,000 or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head how that works.
I'm a bit of a wrestling nerd, so I know the rating stuff.
The wrestling gets a lot. Well, we have Major League Wrestling on beIN.
Yeah, I know you guys have MLW. I know,
yeah. I mean, we actually, for the Turkish Super League show, the highlight show that we do, me and Eric, it's usually anywhere from a 2 to a 4, which is not bad. As considering the issues we have with the cable providers and all of that stuff. And that the fact that people don't really know the league that well yet, where it's slowly coming around. So for that, and then like I said, we've had double-digit ratings for a couple of the Galatasaray Fenerbahce matches. We've had double-digit ratings. So like I said, when you first get something, you have low expectations. You don't want to have too much, but we've had some games where we've had some surprisingly high numbers. So I think the people are starting to come around and learn a little bit more about it. And we keep doing the highlight show, and we keep, giving out the information. I think people will come around and it'll start to build. But it's a gradual thing. It's gradual.
Okay, Umut, any more questions?
No, thanks to him.
Okay, just a quick rapid fire before we go out. Who's going to win the league next season? If you had to pick one team, is Galatasaray still your favorites, or do you see someone else sneaking in there?
Ooh, oh man. You know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and say Trabzonspor.
Okay, I like that.
That's surprising.
Yeah, I think that's a surprise.
And who's going to be the top scorer, you think?
Ooh, man. That's a good question, too.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, because I want to say Bayazit, but then right after I say it, like 2 weeks later, he's going to get transferred. So then I'm like, that sounds like an idiot.
Burak.
See,
that's probably the safe bet.
That was the second choice was Burak Yilmaz, because Beşiktaş have good players that can provide him service. So I wanted, but I always like to kind of pick someone that's not easy pick. I like putting myself out there a little bit, and usually I'm wrong, but hey, you got to be brave sometime.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you make a brave call, at least if you say, well, it's gonna be that guy and it's gonna be Cristiano Ronaldo, then and he's not, you're gonna get called out for it if he doesn't get it. But
I'm gonna go out on I'm gonna say it's either gonna be Burak Yilmaz or the player from Rizespor that we talked about, Vedat Muriqi. I think one of those two.
Yeah. Okay.
The gold product.
Well, you know what, George, I want to thank you very much. You've been so gracious with your time, and I really enjoyed this conversation. You're very knowledgeable for someone who only really got introduced to the Turkish football like 2 years ago, not even.
Basically, yeah.
I hope you get to commentate a lot more games this coming season and enjoy it and help promote the Turkish League across the Atlantic. And thanks a lot for coming on to the show.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. This was fun, man, and I got to rehash all that knowledge I've been researching for the Turkish Super League. So it's really good. I'm ready for next season already. Yeah,
it's a good test. George, where can people find you on the interwebs, on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram? Where are you most active?
I'm usually Twitter and Instagram are the two that I have. I'm actually thinking about deleting my Instagram, but I still have it for now. It's Twitter and Instagram. It's GD Metellus, METELLUS 8, the number 8 at. That's on Twitter and Instagram. I have the same handle for all of them. It makes it easier for me because I'm getting old. I can't remember all that stuff. So GD Metellus 8 is on Twitter and Instagram.
Okay, we'll definitely put that out there in the show notes too, so you can check it out, and we'll tweet it out, of course. So thank you very much for listening, everyone. Next week we'll be back with some more rumors, and then hopefully our scheduled interview with Samantha Johnson. I hope that will take place soon. I don't know if you're familiar with Samantha, George. She works for TRT World, and she covers Turkish football. Yeah, she's from England, football journalist, very knowledgeable too. If you don't know her yet, definitely give her a follow. She's awesome.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll have to follow her. Yeah, because those journalists, they help us research and get information for games and for the highlight show. So they're always.
She speaks proper English, of course, because she is from England.
Okay. Yes,
that might be a little bit of a
Americans.
struggle sometimes with other Turks.
Yeah, I know. We have British co-workers, and they always kind of tease us with our American English, and I'm always like, well, excuse me, Your Highness, Your Majesty, I'm sorry I can't speak like you. So we always have that good back and forth.
People always tell me I have an American accent, but then my American friends, they're always like, no, you don't. But non-Americans always tell me I sound like an American.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks so much. Umut, thank you too, man. And see you all next week.